Trump said the tariffs would bring jobs back home. But in a stunning twist, they may have pushed America's closest ally straight into the arms of China. Just months after the 25% auto tariffs hit, Canada isn't just responding with retaliation, it's rewriting the rules of the game. From leaked negotiations with Chinese EV giants to a tariff regime targeting over $30 billion in U.S. goods, the message from Ottawa is clear: we won't play by Washington's script anymore. And while unconfirmed, sources say Canada is already finalizing a massive electric vehicle pact with BYD and NIO, bringing Chinese investment, tech, and supply chains directly onto North American soil. Factories, once powered by American companies, could soon be rebranded with Mandarin signage.
We'll be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs.
So, did Trump's tariffs actually protect American industry, or just accelerate a historic realignment that could isolate the U.S.? Today, we follow the fallout and the coldest trade pivot North America has ever seen. Canada didn't flinch. It retaliated, and then some. After the U.S. announced sweeping tariffs on foreign auto parts, Prime Minister Mark Carney made good on his warning. A mere 25% tariff now applies to U.S.-made vehicles entering Canada. But retaliation was just the beginning. Leaked memos suggest Ottawa is advancing fast-track negotiations with Chinese electric vehicle giants BYD and NIO. The deal reportedly includes a full-scale EV assembly plant in Ontario, a research and innovation hub in Quebec, access to Canadian lithium and rare earth minerals. These aren't just symbolic gestures, they're strategic pressure points. The factories will likely be built on the same industrial land abandoned by Detroit automakers just months earlier. And here's the colder twist: early recruitment efforts are targeting the same workers laid off during the U.S. retreat. Canadian officials have reportedly offered retraining subsidies, while Chinese firms promise long-term contracts and higher wage ceilings than current North American EV startups.
Prices are going to go up, and when prices go up, sales slump.
While American consumers struggle with higher prices and empty dealership lots, Canada is filling the void, not with subsidies, but with foreign capital and forward-looking policy. Trump wanted a manufacturing comeback. Instead, he may have triggered a Chinese-backed revival in Canada. The economic aftershocks didn't stay in the headlines, they hit the streets. In Windsor, Ontario, Chrysler's decision to suspend production sent over 2,000 workers home. Across the Midwest, dealerships reported a steep decline in showroom traffic. And it wasn't just sticker shock, it was the new reality. Imported auto parts cost more. Cars assembled in the U.S. became harder to finish. Repair costs surged, and insurance premiums followed close behind. Even Canadian-made parts used in Canada can't escape Trump's rules. If they go into vehicles exported to the U.S., they still face a 25% penalty. The tariffs didn't just punish foreign rivals. They punished American consumers, mechanics, and factories tied to global supply chains. And nowhere was that clearer than at service shops now charging 30% more to replace a bumper sourced from Mexico or a sensor from Japan. In response, many automakers didn't bring production home, they paused investments. Honda, for example, shelved plans for an EV plant expansion in Ontario. Instead of accelerating domestic growth, Trump's policy delivered hesitation and fear. And on the other side of the border, China is seizing the opportunity. Reports indicate BYD is already scouting real estate near Toronto and assembling a Canadian hiring team. While Washington argues over supply chains, Ottawa is laying tracks, literally. Rail expansions, tax zones, and new EV infrastructure are being rolled out to accommodate foreign partners. The message to investors is loud and clear. If the U.S. won't lead, we will. Trump promised simplicity. Slap tariffs on imports and jobs would return. But hidden in the fine print of trade agreements like USMCA were structural traps that made the plan almost impossible to execute. To qualify for tariff-free access across North America, vehicles and parts must meet strict rules of origin. That means proving that a high percentage of a car was made within the region. But here's the catch. Even so-called American cars rely heavily on foreign parts. Brake pads from South Korea, semiconductors from Taiwan, wiring harnesses from Mexico. The result? Even US-assembled vehicles failed to qualify under the new thresholds. The tariff penalties kicked in. US automakers scrambled to recalculate their supply chains, but the math didn't work. Sourcing every single component domestically would take years and billions. Trump's administration offered limited rebates to ease the pain, but they were temporary and narrow. Meanwhile, Canada made a calculated pivot. They didn't try to reverse globalization, they redirected it. Instead of fighting to keep US automakers from leaving, Ottawa created incentives for Chinese EV giants to move in. The strategy was surgical. Offer tax breaks to firms willing to invest. Promise exemptions for companies with strong Canadian hiring plans. Secure deals for lithium and rare earth access. And while Washington tangled itself in compliance metrics, Canada negotiated from the ground up. The message from Ottawa wasn't about punishment. It was about leverage. As one analyst told Bloomberg, the US is trying to enforce loyalty. Canada is buying it. Trump may have declared a trade war, but Canada is fighting a supply chain war, and so far it's winning. Prime Minister Mark Carney wasn't the only one signaling a shift. The ripple effects of Trump's tariffs are now starting to divide traditional allies. Behind closed doors, Republican governors in auto-dependent states like Michigan and Indiana are beginning to panic. With thousands of jobs tied to cross-border supply chains, some have quietly pressed the White House to reconsider. One source close to the negotiations said, *, the messaging is all over the place. We can't campaign on American jobs while watching factories idle. Even some Trump-aligned industrial CEOs are breaking ranks. Executives from Ford and Stellantis have reportedly requested backdoor meetings with Canadian officials, exploring ways to preserve their Canadian operations while avoiding U.S. penalties. Meanwhile, Carney doubled down. In his latest statement, he called Trump's trade strategy a violation of economic trust, warning it could irreparably damage North American manufacturing unity. That sentiment is now echoed across Canadian media and increasingly across U.S. boardrooms.
You have to acknowledge that agreements signed should be agreements respected.
And here's the emotional peak. A recent poll shows that more Canadians now support trade deals with China over the U.S. for the first time in 20 years. The question isn't whether Trump burned a bridge. It's whether Canada has already built a new one pointed east. Canada isn't backing down. In fact, it's doubling down. Just days after Oxford Economics claimed Canada had eased up on its counter-tariffs, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne issued a sharp rebuttal. 70% of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods remain in full force. That's not symbolic. That's strategic. And it affects an estimated 42 billion Canadian dollars in U.S. exports, from aluminum and steel to consumer goods. Only select industries like healthcare or food safety received short-term exemptions. The rest? Still taxed at 25%. And now, Canada is using what it calls performance-based remissions, allowing automakers like GM and Honda to bypass some tariffs if they keep operations in Canada. It's a cold move. Reward loyalty, punish retreat. Meanwhile, Ottawa continues quietly building trade ties with China. EV factory talks are just the beginning. Investment zones, rail grants, and mineral contracts are in motion. And Washington is watching from the sidelines. What began as a trade dispute has morphed into a full-scale realignment. And unless the U.S. adapts fast, it may find itself locked out of the very market it helped build. Trump's tariffs were meant to bring the auto industry home. But now, the factories are being rebuilt, just not where he expected. Canada is forging new alliances, embracing foreign capital, and weaponizing trade policy with surgical precision. While Washington clings to control, Ottawa is seizing opportunity. And China? It's quietly stepping through the door Trump left open. This isn't just a trade war anymore. It's a shift in global power, and the U.S. may be the last to realize it. So here's the question. Is America protecting its economy or pushing it away? Let us know in the comments. What should Washington do next? Double down or start over?